So I went all into it, and that's why my book is called Driven to Succeed. Ever since all those moments of overcoming, I've always been driven to succeed. And I really hope that whoever's watching this and listening to this right now will adopt that same mentality. Because if your back's against the wall, that's where you start pulling stuff out of your pocket or your backpack or whatever.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode as well as free training on creativity over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted to welcome onto the show today Kendal Netmaker. Kendal is an entrepreneur, author, and speaker who has founded 5 businesses, winning over 25 business awards in the process. Kendal speaks to thousands of people every year about motivation, leadership, and the power of telling your story. He is the author of Driven to Succeed, From Poverty to Podium, a First Nation success story. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Kendal today. So welcome, Kendal.
Thanks for having me, sir.
So share with everyone what's happening in your world just now.
Oh, we're in the middle of a book right now, doing some speaking engagements now until the new year. You know, things are just, it's been a whirlwind. It's been crazy. You know, people ask me, why did you write this book, Kendal? And the first thing I tell them is I wrote it down. By the time I turn 30, I'm going to write my first book. So I wrote it down initially. Then I turned 30 and I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta do this now, right? So I guess it comes down to writing your goals down. And I think I tried, that's how I hold myself accountable to the things that I do in my life. If I don't write it down, what happens? It's gone, right? So I really stress that for anyone who's trying to achieve whatever goal that you have in your life, you should write it down, commit to it. If you don't like writing it down, use your audio recording app that you have on your phone and record yourself, making a declaration or a commitment to yourself to do that. And I did both of those.
It tells you your kind of journey, because the book is all about from poverty to podium, right? That journey you've taken. You're based in Saskatchewan. Take us through that, and I'd be also interested to know what was that defining point where you actually said to yourself, I want to take that step up of going on stages and telling these stories.
Yeah, well, first off, I was never a public speaker. I was just terrified of public speaking. I was probably the most terrified in the classrooms that I was in. I was always a kid in the back of the room who never spoke, and I would just be super shy, super self-conscious, had no confidence in myself whatsoever. And I personally grew up on a First Nation called Sweetgrass in Saskatchewan, and my mother single-parented myself, my 3 younger sisters as a kid, and my main passion was sports. I loved to play any kind of sport I can get my hands on, and at the time it was soccer. It was very available to play soccer. You get a soccer ball, and that's it. You go outside. And I used to play that outside with my sister Kendra for many hours on end after school. By the time I was in grade 5, I was going to this place called Cut Knife, and it was a small farming community, about 600 people in this little town. And that's where I really, my life changed for 2 reasons. One, I was really thrown outside my comfort zone, because when you grow in a I guess, isolated environment with the people that you're comfortable with, and for myself, it was First Nations people at the time. And then you get thrown into a community where there's nothing but non-Aboriginals in it, and they don't understand where you come from. It was super intimidating for myself. And a lot of kids go through this even to this day. And some call it culture shock. Some call it, just having a hard time adapting to the real world out there. So when I was thrown into that school, I was forced to adapt. And I was forced to adapt to their language. I was forced to adapt to their interests, what they talked about. But one thing we had in common was the sports. I love to play sports. They like to play sports. So you'd be playing soccer. And a few years later, making more friends that way through the recess and playing sports, I had met my best friend, and his name was Johan. And Johan was a kid originally from South Africa. And him and his family came as immigrants to Canada. And his dad was a doctor practicing in Cut Knife. So me and Johan would be playing soccer at recess, And he was the only kid out of the whole school to say, Kendall, why aren't you playing soccer after school? And I had to explain to Johan that we're living on welfare. We did have there's no jobs back home. Um, my only bus is the bus that, my only ride is the bus that just pulled up to take me back to my community. We don't have $50 to pay the fee. I don't have soccer equipment, all that kind of stuff. And he told his mom and dad that night, and the next day they started to help me out. They picked me up from my community, drove me back and forth every single day. They gave me my first opportunity to play organized sport with a coach, and I never forgot about that because we became best friends for the next 2 years. And then 2 years later, Johan and his family had to move away, 2 hours away, and that was probably like I was not going to be traveling that far. So they moved away, and before they left, they gave my mom and my family something. And it was a 1986 Ford Crown Victoria vehicle that was sitting in their driveway that they weren't going to take with them. And they gave it to us to continue to play more sports and stuff. So that's how one family changed their life. And you could see the ripple effect from that.
So that, I mean, what did you sense that they saw in you? It must have, when that young age you were, and they were immigrants. They had just come in, so they probably didn't have a huge amount of resources themselves as well. But what did they see in you specifically?
Well, I think they had the empathy that they went through something similar when they first came to Canada. They came with nothing really, so they were able to see, I guess, that I was really just trying to play a sport that I wanted to play, and I just happened to be friends with their son. So they took it upon themselves to help someone that I guess they could feel like, we know what that's like. And so once they was able to help me with that, they got to know my mom, and they understood my mom's situation, that she was trying everything she could to try and raise us on her by herself, leaving my father, leaving a toxic relationship with my father, and going out into the world by herself with the 4 kids. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and wondering how she's going to do it. So they saw something within myself, but also my mother, and how hard she was trying. So I think that was the reason why they continue to help us beyond that.
So sport's one of those great things. It's like music as well, to give confidence to people maybe that haven't had so much confidence, because you feel that you can excel at something, and people you can be noticed that other people oh, they're really good. Kendall's like great soccer player. You can build that confidence because at this point I'm guessing you still had that lack of confidence in going up on stage and public speaking. Now today you're a public speaker, but tell us about that journey. How did that transition happen?
Well, I was always a shy kid because of mostly bullying as a kid. I grew up, I was a very skinny, tiny kid. And being a skinny, tiny kid, what is the first thing kids talk about? How skinny you are, right? Or how tiny you are. Or they'll find any way to try to tease. That's just how kids are. It's the nature of them, but sometimes kids take it too far, and they don't realize they're getting so personal until years later. And that comes down to how they're being parented a lot of the time. So a lot of times I was being bullied verbally and a little bit physically as well as a kid because of my size and my stature. But I was also very talented. And so the first thing when kids would notice that I was very talented in many sports, the first thing they would say was use their words and talk about how basically try to call me every name in the book that I could, to try to throw me off of my confidence that I was trying to build through that sport. So a lot of people go through this. Whether you're obese, whether you're small, whether you're dark skinned, whether you're black or whatever, right? There's people, a lot of people go through these, and I have so much respect for people who make it, like the world class athletes, especially like Tiger Woods, like Serena Williams, the LeBron James of the world. They had so much against them, and I can relate because I know what it takes to achieve a goal. But they're on the ultimate level, and they have to push that stuff out every single day. All the hate words, all the racism, all the things that people try to do to try to stop them from staying at that ultimate level of confidence and peak performance that unfortunately not a lot of us ever get to do. So I can relate in terms of how hard it is to overcome that. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't overcome that, and if they ever see counseling, they find out the root causes of a lot of things that they're addicted to, or the things that they're avoiding, or the things that's holding them back, or the things that are making them angry. And it usually goes back to those hurting moments from childhood or from a young adult up until where they are now. So I personally had to go through a lot of those things, and I'm still going through them and still trying to I guess, heal those wounds in my past, not just from that, but other things like not having my dad in my life, and trying to have a male figure around me all the time. So a lot of things like that really affected me, and I understand that and how much it's but also been an advantage, but also a disadvantage at the same time. So for anyone who's watching this podcast here right now, if there's things that you feel that are holding you back, or you're feeling frustrated, or you're feeling like you can't get beyond a current situation, don't be afraid to talk to someone, because that was probably the best thing that I've done, and I still do to this day. I still get help. I still seek counsel. I still talk to mentors. I still get coaching. Why? Because no one else is going to do that except for myself. No one else is going to make you do that except for yourself, whoever's watching right now. So if you really want to be successful, you gotta heal your past. You gotta forgive. You gotta move on. Because if you don't do that, you're going to become like most of the celebrities out there. They rise to fame really fast, and what happens? Their past or something else catches up. They become addicted to drugs and alcohol. They're in the face of, you see them on TMZ every single day, or you see them on all these news flashes of the things that they're doing wrong, because they have cracks in their foundation. You have to fill the cracks. You have to heal yourself.
So in terms of with a soccer, you have a soccer coach who's there both not just to help you with the game itself, but also to help you with your mindset, your strategy, tactics, all those different things. So when it came to you going up on stage for those first few times and going up there, which you hadn't done before, maybe lack of confidence there at the start as well. Who were those mentors? Who were those coaches for you that helped take you onto that stage?
When I was in grade 10, after leaving Cut Knife, I went to a different school called North Balford. And in North Balford, in grade 10, there was a speaker at an assembly. So at the beginning of the year, they have, all the kids in the class in this gymnasium. And a speaker came and he was speaking. And I felt like the speaker was just talking to me. Like, that's how good the speaker was. I don't even know who this person was to this day. But I was at the edge of my seat. I was just watching, listening. And the speaker, I remember I was just like in a trance, and I was in the back of the room, and I said to myself, in the back of my mind, I said, whatever it is that I decide to do with my life, I'm going to do something like that one day. I made a commitment to myself in grade 10, but I had a hard time believing that. But I knew that I had something like that I could do something like that one day. I just didn't believe it yet. I had a hard time because of my conditioning, and I didn't know how to remove those barriers. My volleyball coach in grade 10 to 12, he was the guy that really, I guess, instilled future thinking into me, in terms of, Kendal, you could probably do this one day. I could see you becoming a coach here one day, Kendal. I could see you go to university one day. I could see you becoming a really good teacher here at the school. He used to say stuff like that. And no one ever said that to me before. And here's a guy that would used to say, I see potential in you. And I believed it, and I started to believe it in myself, and I started to take his word, and I started to try really hard, because here's a guy that said, I believe in you, right? So that coach was super influential for my young adult years, and going into university. In university, eventually, so I went to college for a few years. I played some volleyball. Then I came back to university, and I was going to get a degree. And when I was getting a degree, I was studying to become a teacher. I thought I was going to become a phys ed teacher. I love to play sports, and it was in that time where I was still had low self-confidence in myself, even speaking in front of my peers. Like the paper would shake. That's how bad I was. And it came to a lot of things that I wasn't letting go of. And I used to think of, what's this person thinking of me? This person might be thinking of me this way, right? Because of bullying. You get conditioned like that. You start to get really self-conscious. And so I had to let go of those limiting beliefs by building my confidence into what I was good at. So I kept playing sports, and I kept trying to do things, create things out of nothing. I'd help with projects, and then my first business came in the end of my university year, my last university year, which was called Nietzsche Gear. It's a lifestyle apparel brand, men's and ladies t-shirts, hoodies, and so on. And it had a social mission to help kids that were once like me, that were once like that grade 5 kid, to take part in sports. And we give a portion of our profits every year to helping those kids. And that was always our mission. And because we had that story, because we had a strong mission and some cool apparel, it was like a success formula we created by accident. We didn't expect it to happen. I thought it was always going to become a hobby for me. Like I thought it was going to be something I'd sell on the side or go to events and so on, but it became a business after a while. It came from apartment to a little office, to the little kiosk in the mall, to a store in the mall, to more stores, online store, and then eventually a headquarters that we're in right now. So like it's so much has happened. But if it wasn't for this business, I would not have got introduced into public speaking, into keynote speaking, doing workshops, because people started to ask me, Kendall, you should come and talk about your story of how you started this business to our high school students or to our college class. That's how it started. I went to go do this stuff for free. And I remember my very first time I got paid to speak, it was like $50. And I was like, oh my goodness, I got $50 to go and speak. I can't believe this is crazy, right? And then it was like $200, $300, $500. It was like 1,000. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually crazy, right? But the main focus was I always remember myself going back to grade 10 and remembering what I told myself. And realizing that I had an opportunity to not only impact the people around me, my own First Nations brothers and sisters that don't have a lot of role models like myself to do this kind of stuff, to be a speaker, to do business. So I realized I had that opportunity to be a great role model, but also to inspire thousands of other people that are also going through things, that are also going through obstacles, that also want to start businesses, that also want to become speakers. So I knew I had an opportunity, and I took that onto myself.
And when did you start weaving into that, really having a sense of actually storytelling is where you wanted to focus? Because so you'd been in sports, then you'd started building this kind of business on the side, and people asked you to kind of speak on stages, talking about your business and your success and doing that. Now there's a difference from someone going on and just saying, okay, this is kind of what I do, to really putting storytelling at the heart of what they do to make it magical. So when did you sense, actually, I like doing this storytelling thing? This is what I want to do more of this.
Well, I'm going to backtrack really quickly. First Nations people, Native Americans in the U.S., everything is passed, the legends, the teachings are passed down through stories. So when I was growing up on my community, going to cultural ceremonies, being taught by elders, how did they teach me? Through stories. Yeah. It was all through that. It was all through stories, through legends and so on. And so as a kid, I was always being taught that way. So I was conditioned to listen to stories and to get messages through stories. So when I started to get asked to go and speak to high schools and colleges, I started to do the same thing of how they would speak to me. So I would start from the origin, and I would get, like we just talked about. I talked about from the kid up until who I am now. But I would plant teaching points in between that people don't realize that they're learning, right? So that's how I teach, and that's how I do a lot of my speeches, as I tell not just my own story, but other people's stories, and I teach through those points. So that's how it became part of my life, was my upbringing, and the First Nations culture in general. The ceremonies is taught through stories and through teachings that I'm just very grateful to be able to do this in through how I do this when I speak now. It's very similar, but it lacks those kind of teachings, but more mainstream teachings now.
Yeah. So you were able to kind of integrate that thing that was always there. You've been brought up on it, and you'd heard those stories, those legends, and then start to take it into your own work. And in any good story, there's always that moment. Is you hit rock bottom bit where they have to kind of go up. So in your own journey, I mean, albeit you're kind of relatively early into your journey, and things are going to go for many, many years, hopefully. But can you tell us about that time in your own life when you maybe hit that rock bottom and you went, oh, okay, you made a key and important lesson, an important discovery that you thought, okay, I need to, this is going to help me get back. This is something I want to share with others.
In 2011, it was about 8 months into my niche gear business, and my wife was a teacher. Well, sorry, she was studying to become a teacher. She was in her last year of studies. So I had just finished university, and I was doing this as a hobby part-time still. It wasn't a business yet, and I was doing it out of my apartment. So I wasn't able to pay myself, and I was trying to build this hobby into something. My son wasn't even 1 year old yet, and we found ourselves in downtown Saskatoon, the city that we're living in, applying for welfare. And during that process was awful. Like it was like, I can't imagine people having to do that every single month going through that process because it's like they make you feel awful about yourself. Like they don't treat you like a human being in there. Like you're a number when you go in there. At least over here. I don't know. It could be different everywhere. And I remember going through that, and I went through the last part of it, and I said, "Let's go." We're not, and we walked. We walked out. We went back to our apartment, and I said, we had a conversation. And I said, Rachel, I have this business, and I really feel if I give it everything I have, it's gonna go somewhere. Like I just feel like something's gonna happen, but I need your support. And she supported me from making that decision. I didn't know how I was gonna pay for Pampers, pay for formula, pay for rent, but that decision a month later, she found out she won like 3 scholarships and bursaries. So now she had like $5,000, like a cushion for us to live for like 3 or 4 months while I do this, while I go after this dream. And it was in those 3 or 4 months where we went from the apartment to office to cart to store. So I went all into it, and that's why my book is called Driven to Succeed. Ever since all those moments of overcoming, I've always been driven to succeed. And I really hope that whoever's watching this and listening to this right now will adopt that same mentality. Because if your back's against the wall, that's where you start pulling stuff out of your pocket or your backpack or whatever, other things that you don't even know that you're good at. And for me, it was I had a story. And it was right after that moment, I started telling our story of the business, why I started this business, how my best friend helped me in grade 5, why we're trying to do that through this business. And it was in that moment where our business started to increase, where things started to flow, where it became a full-time business and not just a hobby. And that, my friends, was the secret, was don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to go through obstacles. Don't be afraid who cares what people think? That's, I used to be trapped by other people's thinking all the time. And it stopped me from wanting to try and to grow, to make mistakes. So now I don't care. I honestly, I developed the I don't care attitude about other people who don't have my best interest. That's their stuff. It's not me. And everything I do now is solely around myself and my family. And that's that. Every decision now is based on that. And going forward, if it's not going to affect us positively, I'm not going to do it. If it doesn't make me feel good, I'm not going to do it.
And you mentioned that time when you were at school and that person came in. You don't even know who they were, but they came in and they spoke up on stage, and you went, okay, that's kind of what I want to do. And the reason I love that story is because there's a lot of people that listen to this show, watch this show, who are professional speakers. That's their job. Companies will pay them, or associations will pay them, really well to go and speak all over the world and to share their story. And it's quite easy because you kind of get into that thing and you're going speaking to audiences of people who are often very successful in their businesses, and they have a pretty amazing life. And so as I'm hearing that, you're actually encouraging me as well, like, kind of go back into some of those schools and go into those kind of places, because you just don't know the impact that can have, or going and speaking in that room, 400 people, 500 people, kids, and that one life that you can change there as well. So in your own work, are you going back, as well as your speaking in larger events, are you going back into those schools?
I actually was at school this morning. I was actually out of school this morning before we came here. One of the teachers asked me to go and say some words this morning before I came to do this. So I was rushing over here to do this with you. I was out of school. So I still go to some schools. And now that I'm a paid speaker, those schools can't afford to pay. So I often donate my time to certain schools to go and I guess give back and to try and help those kids that I feel need it. Especially kids that are really inner city here where we're living. Some of them don't have any parents. Some of them don't have a guardian. And they're kind of neglected. So I feel for a lot of those kids that are out there that school's their safe haven, and the teacher is the closest thing that they have to a parent. So I really feel it's important to try to give back whenever you can, especially if whoever's listening to this, if you make it, go back and help people. That's the most fulfilling thing that you can ever do with your success. Go help people. Go give back. Go mentor someone. Go speak for a school. Go, don't be afraid to do that, because schools are always looking for people to come and inspire their kids, or to try and give them advice, because it makes their job easier if they're inspired and they're working effectively in school. It's less trouble. So don't be afraid to do that.
And you'll probably never know the impact that you have. Like that teacher, that person that came and spoke in your school, he or she will never know the impact that and how that changed your life for the better, and obviously the successes you've gone on to have as well. The show, as we start to finish up here, I'd love to know some quick fire questions to you. Are there any tools or apps or things that you find very useful as you've been building your businesses, building your speaking career?
First off, I try to post a video every single day, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. So that keeps me disciplined to keep my content consistent. I personally don't do any scheduling. Some people do. Some people's businesses require that. But I personally don't, because I like to try to be authentic. And right now we're trying to live in a most authentic world. So some people will use things like Hootsuite to try and schedule their stuff. Where's my phone? Hold on a second. I'll tell you right now what I use, especially if you're a freelancer and you don't have a lot of money to get some graphics done or a Facebook banner done or even a website done. I use a site called Fiverr.com. And it's an app on my phone too that I can just go on and I can get someone to design a quick logo or retouch an image, or I can get someone to design even a neat t-shirt design if I wanted. Any kind of graphic that you want, and even promotional videos, they can do something funny for you. You can get resume writing tips, business writing tips, like everything on there. Like I that site right there has saved me a lot of money and made us a lot of money. I also use a site called an app called Upwork.com. So Upwork is a site where you can get freelancers to help you with your business, to create your websites, to do some social media posts for you, to answer your phone for you, answer your emails, becoming your assistant. So I use those two right there are two of my favorite right now with everything I do.
Great tools. Fiverr and Upwork, they're really good. Tools I use as well. We use in our team, and they're excellent. What about if you were to recommend one book, not your own book, but a book by another author that has really inspired you, or you think more people should be reading?
What kind of audience do you feel? Which kind of audience?
So you're known in terms of like storytelling, about speaking. Are there any books that have helped you along that journey as you've started to become a paid speaker?
I would say this book right here is probably one of the most beautiful journeys that I've ever read before. And the reason I'm going to give you this book recommendation is because before we became husband and wife, and even boyfriend girlfriend, my wife Rachel made me read this book, and it's called The Alchemist, and you probably read that book before, by Paulo Coelho, I believe his name is, and it's a book of basically one person's journey of going through so much stuff in their life and wanting to give up, doubting themselves, and anyone can relate to this because we all go through those. We're all human, and at the end of it, right when they're on their last, that's when they find what they're missing. That's when they find that gold, or whatever you want to call it. So read that book, because that's one that's like classic for me, and it resonates with me because of all the things that I had to overcome as a kid, and even to this as an entrepreneur.
Fantastic. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. We'll put that link here as well. And what about an album or a record? I mean, you're in Canada. You have some of the best music artists in the world have come from Canada, but some of my favorite artists come from Canada. Are there any artists that you really like? You like listening to? Maybe get you pumped up before you go on stage?
Oh my goodness. I'm kind of old school, so I listen to like Eminem still. I listen to his old stuff, especially because a lot of his tracks, although they're very explicit, they talk a lot about like overcoming things, like pain, like a lot of stuff like that. And I use all the stuff that I went through as pain for fuel. And that's one of the chapters in my book is turning your pain into gain, to achieving your success journey. And for a lot of his songs, it kind of inspires me to keep moving forward and to really give this audience everything I have, or this workout everything I have.
And if you were to recommend one of his albums, what would be the one to start with? People that don't know so much of Eminem stuff.
I'll give you a song that I listen to all the time, "Till I Collapse" by Eminem. That's the song that I listen to.
Fantastic. And then I want you to imagine now, Kendal, that you wake up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. So you've got all the skills, all the knowledge that you've acquired, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have to completely restart things. What would you do? How would you restart?
First off, that's an excellent question because I think more people need to be asked that question. I would I would take whatever resources that I have, and I would assume that I know that I was a speaker by that point, and I would go out and I'd speak for free. I'd go to every free event. I would just call people and I would go and speak for free. And eventually, if you're good at something, you do it, you're giving it everything you have, people will see value in that after a while. People will see value and they'll start paying you. And that's how I got into paid speaking. And I know that I could do the same thing if I wanted to go back and if everything stopped, right? And I had nothing, I'd go back to doing exactly that.
Fantastic. And Driven to Succeed, From Poverty to Podium, First Nations Success Story is out now. If people want to learn about the book, learn more about you and your businesses, where's the best place for them to go?
They can go to my site, kendalnetmaker.com, and there's a tab there that says Driven to Succeed. And you can go on there, you can see the reviews, and then you can buy it right there through Amazon. There's an ebook on. I actually have an audiobook. I did it myself, so you don't have to listen to someone else's voice. And there's also, for those of you who still use CDs, there's also an audio CD for those of you who still use those as well.
Some old school. Get that Sony Walkman onto yourself as well. I know you've got an online academy as well there. Kendal, thank you so much for coming on today. I think it's an incredibly inspiring story that you have, especially those people who don't maybe have around them some of the role models for going at their public speaking, whether it's to be a paid speaker or just to kind of use their voice to tell the stories that are important to them. So I wish you all the best with your business and your speaking, and thank you so much for coming on today and sharing about your creative life.
Thank you for having me.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.